My name is Phyllis Smith. I am the historian of Mount Olive Cemetery, which means that I research the history of the cemetery, how it became a cemetery. I research who's in the cemetery because over 90% of our graves do not have headstones, they're unmarked. And I also research the lives of the people buried in our cemetery. One of the things you can do when you're here is we have those little code boxes that you can put your camera on, and one of them takes you to the website of Mount Olive Cemetery Historical Preservation Society. The other one takes you to what we call our story map. And there is on one of the walls in here a copy of the story map. And what that does is it shows you the positions of our veterans' graves in the cemetery. Our cemetery is 7.24 acres off of Cumberland Drive. We have 32 veterans buried in the cemetery. And there's an estimate that we have 1,350 people buried in the cemetery, although I do believe that that's a conservative estimate. One of the things in researching the U.S. Color Troops that we found out is the fact that one regiment of U.S. Color Troops, the 101st U.S. Color Troops, had their regimental headquarters in Clarksville during the last year of the Civil War. And they used a house in Clarksville that was known as the Pettis House, not then but later, for their regimental headquarters. That house stood where the Dunn Center is today, and it was demolished to make room for the Dunn Center. We have reproductions of two of the U.S. Color Troop headstones here. They're kind of plain headstones, but they all have the same thing. They have a shield for the U.S. Color Troop, and then the information on the U.S. Color Troop inside, which is his name and the unit that he was a member of. Not all of our U.S. Color Troops have these headstones. Their families would have to request that the U.S. government give them that headstone. We have currently 2 U.S. Color Troops that we know are buried in the cemetery, and we don't know where in the cemetery they're buried because their families did not request those headstones and they did not get them. In the center, you see a picture in the back of a lone soldier there. That basically is a picture of the U.S. Color Troop statue that will be at Fort Defiance and will be dedicated in June of this year. Mount Olive Cemetery Historical Preservation Society so much wanted to honor these men that we wanted to put a monument up for them in really the most suitable place in Clarksville, which is our lone remaining Civil War fort of the 3 that were built in the city. Whenever we have a cleanup, we seem to always find more headstones, and sometimes when I go and research our U.S. Color Troops, I find that there is another U.S. Color Troop buried in there, simply because the community of U.S. Color Troops after the war in Clarksville was a very close community, and what you find is that when one of them put in an application for a pension, he would have to have depositions from comrades from that unit saying yes, he served. So you get names of other U.S. Colored Troops that served that way, and some of them have turned out to be buried in Mount Olive, but have, and that's another aspect of our research. Basically, not only do we research the persons in our cemetery, but we also are trying to identify all the U.S. colored troop veterans that settled in Montgomery County. Mount Olive Cemetery Historical Preservation Society really thanks Austin Peay's GIS Center for their contribution to making this map a reality. Without them, we wouldn't have that.